Here's a question most people get wrong. Who won the smartphone war, Apple or Samsung? Hello everyone, welcome to the Wealth Brothers. Let's get into the video. Apple's market cap over $3 trillion. Samsung's around 300 billion. Same fight, wildly different outcomes. Why this isn't just a story about phones. It's a story about two completely different business models and what separates a good company from a generational one. Let's start at the roots because where a company comes from shapes how it competes forever. Apple was built on one obsession, the intersection of technology and liberal arts. From day one, hardware and software were designed together under the same roof by the same team. That's called vertical integration, and it became Apple's sharpest competitive weapon. When the iPhone launched in 2007, Apple didn't just make the phone. They designed the chip, the operating system, the app store, and the retail experience. Every touch point, controlled. That's not typical, that's radical. Samsung is a South Korean conglomerate with roots in trading and manufacturing. They built dominance through horizontal scale, becoming the world's largest producer of memory chips and display panels before they ever became a major phone brand. Here's the twist. Samsung supplies components to Apple. Samsung's OLED screens are inside iPhones. Samsung's memory chips power Apple devices. They are simultaneously the fiercest rivals in consumer electronics and one of each other's biggest business partners. That tension between competitor and supplier is unlike almost anything else in modern business. This is where it gets interesting from a business perspective. Apple's model runs on ecosystem lock-in. The iPhone is a gateway. Once you're in iCloud, AirPods, Apple Watch, FaceTime, then leaving becomes genuinely painful. That's called switching cost. Apple has engineered the highest switching cost in consumer tech history. Hardware margins sit around 35 to 40%, but Apple's services business, the App Store, Apple Music, iCloud, Apple Pay that runs margins closer to 75%. Services crossed $100 billion in annual revenue in 2026. That segment alone would rank among the top 50 companies in the world. Apple doesn't just sell you a product, it sells you membership in a platform and charges every developer and creator who wants to reach you. Samsung's model is built on volume and diversification. They operate across consumer electronics, semiconductors, and display panels. When phone sales slow, chip demand might rise. That's revenue hedging at industrial scale. But Samsung competes in the Android market alongside Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo, all running the same Google operating system. There is no Samsung ecosystem. A Samsung customer can switch phones tomorrow with zero friction. That's why Samsung's flagship margins sit around 10 to 15%, while Apple's hover near 40. Same product category, completely different economics. Here's the narrative you've heard: Samsung innovates, Apple copies and monetizes. And honestly, there's truth to it. Samsung had OLED screens, foldable phones, high refresh displays, and stylus input before Apple. That's real engineering leadership. But Apple plays a different game. They wait, study adoption curves, and enter a category late, then redefine it with integration and simplicity that changes user expectations. The iPod wasn't first, the iPad wasn't first, the Apple Watch wasn't first, but each one became the category standard. Apple spends around 7 to 8% of revenue on research and development. Most major tech rivals spend significantly more. Yet Apple's profit per dollar of R&D is arguably the highest in the industry. That's not luck, that's strategic discipline. Apple is betting on silicon and services. The move to Apple-designed chips gave them a performance lead that competitors are still chasing. The Vision Pro headset is their long-term spatial computing play. And Apple Intelligence, their AI strategy, runs on-device rather than in the cloud, making privacy the product. Samsung is betting on semiconductors and foldables. Galaxy AI features like Circle to Search and live translation are genuinely impressive and often arrive ahead of Apple. The foldable Galaxy Z line gives them a form factor Apple hasn't touched. If Samsung's next-generation chip manufacturing matures, they become a real alternative to TSMC. TSMC is the most strategically critical factory on Earth right now. So who won? Apple won financially. They capture roughly 85 to 90 cents of every dollar of profit in the global smartphone industry, while shipping only 18% of units. That is the most lopsided value capture in the history of consumer electronics. But the deepest lesson here is this: the best product doesn't always win. The best business model does. Samsung won in reach and resilience. Samsung has global scale Apple can't match. Samsung has diversification Apple doesn't have. Samsung has manufacturing capabilities Apple depends on. The deepest lesson here is this: the best product doesn't always win. The best business model does. Samsung sells you a phone, Apple sells you a platform. That single distinction, product versus platform, explains the $3 trillion gap. That's the Wealth Brothers breakdown. If this added value, subscribe and drop a comment. Do you think Samsung can ever close the profit gap, or is Apple's model structurally unbeatable? See you in the next one.